work done outside New Cumberland. The major challenge with businesses is that the owners don't really understand the realities of the situation. They're usually very obvious realities to us because we've seen them 8 million times before, but they think that their situation is unique. And they think that if you stop feeding the cats, they'll just dematerialize and disappear, and their problem is solved. So the first thing they usually do is threaten people who are feeding. And then it frequently escalates from there, where they're like really threatening people with, police charges for trespassing and so on. And most of the time, if you sit rational people down and talk to them about the realities that they're dealing with, it's clear that they didn't understand some of these realities. For example, the vacuum effect, that if you pick up cats and move them out of a situation and there's more cats in the surrounding area and there's garbage to be eaten, because garbage and rodents are found are 3 times more likely to be in the diet of a free-roaming cat than anything else, because that's what they evolved to eat. So if there's a dumpster, they're not going to go away. They're going to eat out of the dumpster. They're going to beg for scraps from people. They're going to actually become more of a nuisance. In addition to which, they're going to continue to breed, and so the population will continue to expand in that location. Animals will be malnourished and underfed, so they're going to get sick and die a lot, and they're going to do that in front of your business clients. So your business clients are going to see these ill and starving animals, and that's not going to reflect well on your business. And so once you start to sort of talk to them about some of those basic realities of why they should permit trap, neuter, return, most of the time, if they're rational human beings, they'll respond positively and let you keep going. So my experience has always been that if there's an opportunity to operate in a business setting, that we should talk to the people first who own the property and get their approval to be there. In the old days, we used to do everything on the down low at night when no one was looking, and creeping around and trying to stay out of trouble. But ultimately then you've invested a lot of yourself and a lot of resources, and you may end up having to leave because otherwise you're going to get arrested. And it creates an adversarial relationship with the property owner, which we don't want. And so I find that if you approach them in a positive and meaningful way, and you provide them with really meaningful information that clearly communicates that trap, neuter, return is good for their bottom line, because that's really all they care about, that they tend to get on board. And if they don't, you say, thank you very much. We're moving on to people who do understand how this is going to work for them. If you change your mind, get in touch with us, but we try not to fight with them, or it just makes matters worse and it makes things harder for the cats. It's hard to do because sometimes you have to walk away from a situation that you could fix. But oftentimes those people will come back to you later because they've learned the hard way that their way isn't working. We also always communicate to people that these animals are a domestic species, and that as a domestic species in the state of Pennsylvania, they are protected by the Pennsylvania Consolidated Statutes. It is against the law to kill them, maim them, poison them, or otherwise harm them. It is a violation of the statute, and they can be charged with animal cruelty if they try to poison the cats. If they try to use leg hold traps, we've had threats of that, all kinds of threats. But when you remind people that they're violating the law if they do that, and that that if you hear that animals are being harmed, that you are going to report them to the police, they tend to back off that really quickly. People are frustrated most of the time. They feel like nobody's paying attention to their problem, nobody's listening to them, nobody cares what they think. And so if we try really hard to communicate that we appreciate their concerns, that we share their concerns, and that we're here to help them too, and that this is the most effective and cost-effective way for them to do it.
So, Christine, what do you do when they just say, look, we're moving them out, and by hook or by crook, we'll have somebody come in and take them out. We don't care what they can dispose of them. We don't care.
I explain to them how much that's going to cost them, and that usually changes their minds.
Okay.
Because they have to pay somebody to come in and trap the cats. And in our experience, the prices that they are quoted range from $150 to $175 a trap to set a trap. That doesn't include anything. That's just to set a trap. And then it's going to cost them additionally to have those animals delivered to the appropriate animal control or shelter to be killed, because it is against the law for the people who trap those cats to kill them.
That's the key. They can't.
And we tell them that if we find out that the people they're paying to remove the cats are killing them, that because they've hired those people, they are therefore guilty of conspiracy to violate the law.
Excellent. I did not know that.
I think that what happens is that people think that it's just okay for them to make these threats, because they usually get what they want by threatening people. But when you make it clear to them that they can't fulfill their threats, then they tend to back off.
Excellent. So if I'm correct, it's my understanding that if you are feeding them, or maybe your employees are feeding them, that they are considered your cats?
It depends on the municipality. But the Pennsylvania law is very broad in that respect. It's actually against the law in the state of Pennsylvania to deny a domestic species of sustenance. So it's actually against the law not to feed them. You are violating law if you don't feed a domestic species. So the fact that they don't belong to anybody is of no consequence as far as the law is concerned. They're still a domestic species, and they must be provided with food, and if you actively do not provide them with food, you are violating the law.
Then how do they get away with no feed policy?
They just threaten people, and people cave.
No, I'm talking municipalities pass no feed ordinances.
Yeah, the no feed ordinances they pass, they usually create and pass based on an individual situation in which there's somebody feeding in a neighborhood with a lot of cats, and they aren't spaying and neutering them, and all the neighbors are agitated and fed up, and they complain enough to the municipal authorities that the municipal authorities, again, not knowing better, think, we'll just tell everybody not to feed and that will solve our problem.
But they really can't do that.
To prove that I am feeding cats in violation of a no-feed ordinance is really difficult. In order to penalize me, you must prove that I am feeding those cats, which means you must take pictures of me feeding those cats. You must find witnesses that will testify to me feeding those cats. You must take video that is date and time stamped.
Before they can even find you.
Before you can even start to threaten me with punitive actions. So they rely on threats to get people to do what they want. And again, 9 times out of 10 people keep feeding anyway. They just feed on the down low. They just try to keep it to themselves and keep quiet about it, and then the problem magnifies because the cats keep breeding, and the situation just gets worse.
But how can a feeding ban pass when it's in violation
Of the state law.
the state law?
a good
That's what I
question.
don't
Who
get.
challenges them and who tells them?
In the
it
state of
is?
Pennsylvania, municipalities have a lot more power over setting, over legislation than in other states. It's a unique feature of our state that municipalities have a lot more control over official activities. In a lot of other states, it's county-based, but here in our state, every municipality can set whatever rule they want. The good news is, though, that more and more municipalities are getting the picture that this doesn't work. And so more and more municipalities are participating in the trap, neuter, return strategy and supporting it in some way or another. Just recently, and early this month, Upper Allen has modified its ordinance to mirror the ordinance in Lower Allen, so that as long as you are engaged in trap, neuter, return, you can't be fined or penalized for feeding cats. So the goal for us is to do whatever we can to get these municipalities or businesses or others to do the right thing and then communicate that to their peers, because it's their peers they're going to listen to. I can go and talk to these people, but they're just thinking, of course you're going to say that. But if they talk to somebody else who's in their same setting, and this is what's happening in our area because of the municipal activities, we're seeing more and more municipalities getting the clue And once they change their local laws, then it's very difficult for local business people to penalize people or threaten people, because the local law says if you're spaying and neutering, rabies vaccinating, and ear tipping your cat, you cannot be held liable under the normal ordinance. And so a business person can't threaten you anymore because there's no ordinance under which to threaten you. And a lot of municipality authorities will tell you, a lot of business people will tell you that you're going to get in trouble with the law for feeding because it's against the law to feed. But if you look at the ordinance, you'll see that there's nothing that prohibits you from feeding. It's just the threat they use that's not in their ordinance.
You need to go on YouTube and YouTube this so people can access it.
That's what I'm
She's
doing.
doing it. So there's very few no feed ordinances. They don't work. They're unenforceable. They aren't enforced. And there's more and more municipalities that are altering their ordinances to say it's okay for you to feed these cats as long as you are doing trap and return. And I think we're going to see more and more and more of that in the coming years. Because it's common sense. They spend less money because they're not sicking their cops and their codes enforcement officers on people day in and day out, which costs them money, even if it seems hidden to them. It's a bottom line loss for them. And they're not paying as much for their shelter contracts. They're not paying as much for their animal control contracts.
Well, and the answer is, with as many ferals as there are in these communities, there isn't a facility that could take them. So you're better off to do this and cut down the risk of rabies. I mean, if nothing else, at least every one of these cats is getting a rabies shot.
Yeah. So I think that we're seeing a real change. I know, Karen, I certainly within the past 5 or 6 years, we've seen a real change in the community, both from a business and a municipal standpoint, that we're seeing a lot more support for this strategy because it saves money. And at the end of the day, the municipal authorities care about their taxpayer dollars, and that's cool. If that's all they care about, it all works for us.
And yet, the other thing is, when you're talking about businesses, if you have one of us working in that business, someone like us who cares about the cats, they can alone get the whole thing going so that the business owner then understands what TNR is and how it would profit them. So people need to speak up, even though a lot of times we think we're the minority. Once you get talking, you find out you really aren't. So.
Does anybody have any questions for Christine on this?
I have one. This is about the rabies thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. When the cats come in and get TNR and they get spayed or neutered and their vaccine for rabies, that's what, a 3-year vaccine?
Legally, it's a 1-year vaccine. There's all kinds of veterinary arguments about whether it lasts 1 year or 3 years or 5 years or 10 years, but legally in the state of Pennsylvania, it's a 1-year vaccine.
Okay, so it's 1 year. So then, how are the cats
Protected.
vaccinated after that 1 year?
They aren't.
Some caretakers bring their colony cats if they're
Okay.
socialized enough to vaccine clinics and get them done. And one of our goals is to start revaccinating cats that have been done at our clinic
That's what
and provide a 3-year booster. We're still debating the most efficient way to do that, whether we want to hold clinics or whether we want to just do 5 cats at the end of the day, every day, have people bring them in traps. They're going to have to be in traps.
So it would be up to the colony caretaker.
Correct, just like a pet owner. It's,
Okay.
yeah.
That was my question, like, when people say, well, it's only a year or 3 years.
I think-
Still prevents a lot of transmission.
Right.
Right,
And the
right.
sad reality is that there's a fairly high mortality rate among these animals, so a lot of them don't live longer than that.
And actually that vaccine lasts a lot longer.
Yes.
There's a
I've
lot
asked-
of arguments
yep.
about that too.
I've asked Dr. Clemens. He says there's really no difference between a 1 year and a 3
But
year.
legally, it is a 1 year and then a 3-year booster, just like with pet cats. So the goal, certainly our goal, is to get as many of those cats into our clinic so that we can booster them, but to also encourage caretakers to take them to vaccine clinics, because if they're properly managed, they're just as easy to revaccinate as any other cat.
I feed with a group of people at the children's home in Mechanicsburg, and because it is a children's home, we are in the process of revaccinating the cats because of, they are kind enough to allow us on their property and everything, and they even pave for us to get in there. So, and in the beginning, they were totally against the whole thing.
I'll tell you what, this is just something I think we should put in the back of our mind, because if we ever get another children's home, nursing home, whatever it may be, this may be a client that we could say, would you be willing to talk to a like facility and about how you were against it and now you see success with
The
it?
major challenge we have in dealing with businesses is mobile home park owners and managers. It's really true that the one location that most consistently is a problem is the one location where you have the most trouble getting people to do the right thing and to not renege on their promises and to not backpedal and to not threaten people even though they've said that it's okay to do things. And I really don't know why that is, but has consistently been the one business location where we've had the most trouble dealing with the
Even when they've
owners.
signed an agreement with us, they don't take it seriously.
I really don't know this. Trailer parks, are they like owned by property